I'm waiting for her. I think she should be on in a second. All the best for your endeavor, Devyas. We're waiting for NASA Blueberry, Alyssa to join us. Okay. We seem to be having an issue to get her on. No, we're still waiting for her. That's what it is. Hey!
Hello.
I don't know about Mars, Alyssa, but you landed into our show finally.
I've made it.
Yeah, you made it. You made it. Safe landing. Though turbulent landing, but safe landing. So how are you? What time is it back there?
It is 9 a.m.
9 a.m. You're obviously an early riser with all the trading that you do, right?
Some days. I do enjoy my sleep some days.
You know, they let you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, welcome to this online lecture series. On behalf of IIT Techfest team, I welcome you all. Of course, I'm not a part of IIT. I'm an anchor, an actor, otherwise from India, and I live in Mumbai. And they're all very excited to have you on this chat show. And more than them, I'm excited to be talking to you because when they told me that here was a person who since the age of 3 dreamt of being an astronaut, and has actually gone in and made her dream come true, and not in any small way, but in such a fantastic way that you're actually going to be one of the first few who will set foot on planet Mars. Well done up till now. Wow.
Thank you.
So I'm in complete awe, and I must tell you that. Hey, tell me, at the age of 3, do we even know what we want to do? And do our parents even take that seriously? How did this happen for you? You dreamt of being an astronaut since the age of 3 and you actually followed that dream. How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I was 3, it definitely was not like as serious at all like as it was or as it is now. So when I was like 3 or so, I was mainly just interested in Mars, just because, I was curious about it. No one had been there before, so why not go? Which is kind of
But
what.
why were you curious about Mars as a 3-year-old child? The red color?
Well, so kind of we don't remember too exactly, but my dad remembers me asking all kinds of questions about Mars and about space. Our best guess is that it was like an episode of The Backyardigans, which was a television cartoon, because
Okay.
they talked about Mars and they went to Mars. So we think that's what sparked the conversation. But obviously now as I've gotten older, it's become more serious, and then also the same for my dad's support and everything. Obviously he was supportive when I was 3, but he didn't realize that I would still be working towards it. So he also kind of helped in getting more supportive the more serious I got.
Wow. So what did you do? You told him one fine day when you grew up that this is what I want to do, Dad. And then you guys went about it and you applied and you educated yourself all the same. And here you are today, of course. Tell me, how does someone commit one's whole life, Liza, to just this one thing? And it could change your life 13 years down the line, right? What's in your mind? What are you thinking all the time?
Yeah, I mean, basically everything that I've done up to this point and kind of continue to do, it's basically just building a resume to apply to the astronaut selection process in the future, which is kind of what you do with any job. So, any career that you're looking into, you start building a resume. You have to do what's necessary, maybe add some extras to stand out as, an applicant. And so it's essentially the same thing. So I've kind of been doing whatever interests me and whatever relates to the career path that I want to go down, since there's so many different ways to become an astronaut. And so just kind of going and learning as much as I can about the career path that I'm going into to eventually apply, and hopefully add some extras to hopefully stand out in the selection process.
Okay, so you still have a selection process ahead of you, but you are one of the few who's training for that maiden voyage.
Yeah, so kind of in the future, I will actually apply to the official astronaut selection process. Right now, everything that I'm doing is with a private citizen science research organization. So everything that we do isn't directly affiliated with NASA. Our research is supported by NASA, but we're not directly affiliated. But we still do, so all the research that we do is kind of related to space in a way. So for example, microgravity flights, water survival training, decompression training, G-force training, all the different things that we do. It's all in the name of research, but I'm able to help them with research and then also gaining these skills that will eventually be useful in the selection process and just being an astronaut in general.
And I'm going to pretend I understood every single training procedure you spoke about.
Exactly.
Hey, but you're just such a lovely young girl, and your training must be what? Intense? Tough? How is it?
Yeah, definitely. It kind of depends on what it is. So typically how it's done is usually whenever I decide that I have time to actually go into one, because I can't really pick the dates and really have to work around college and work around school, because make sure that I'm staying at school as much as possible. But basically, if I'm able to attend one, I'll usually go to wherever that's located for, it's usually 1, maybe 2 weeks that we stay there just doing whatever that research is all day, every day for a week or 2 weeks, and then kind of come back. But most of the trainings also required like classes beforehand. So usually for, a month, probably like a month, maybe a month and a half, I'll just be taking like a class related to that course, which is just a small online class, kind of in addition to school, and then going out and actually doing the training for a week.
So you are the youngest who was accepted into the project Postum Academy. Someone watching us there is asking us as to how at such a young age were you accepted into the academy for that particular training?
Yeah, so I started Possum when I was 15, and that was kind of unheard of at the time. So basically, the way I heard about Possum was just I was actually at a camp, and one of my camp counselors went to the university that this project was starting at and had started to establish. And she said, I don't know if you'll be able to get in because I don't really know all the details, but it's worth a phone call. So we ended up applying, and then we ended up getting on the phone with Jason, who runs the program, and basically I was just like spitballing every fact and every like skill that I had that could relate. So he was like, well, we're gonna go into a decompression chamber, and I was like, well, I've done scuba diving before, and it's basically the same thing, even though it's not whatsoever. But I was trying to connect things that I've done to it. So what we ended up working out was that I would go and do that introductory week, and then from then on, we would see if I could continue to commit to other research projects. So I went and I did that introductory week at 15, had a blast. Everything went super well. We had such a great time. And they've since, realized that younger kids are able to join the program. So now I've been continuously helping them and getting, more 18-year-olds and that kind of thing involved.
Wow. So not just for yourself, you're also making a difference for all those younger people out there who also want to be astronauts in the years ahead. So here you are, you're training for a particular project, a particular goal that I can very well see rules your entire life. Yeah. And it will happen in a few years from now. And it can change your life. Someone there in the comment box said that, do you have the fear of failure, or have you dealt with it and put it aside? Do you constantly feel it? Do you constantly deal with it, or have you dealt with it?
I would definitely say to an extent it's dealt with, because obviously, still having to apply to the astronaut selection process, obviously there's still a chance that I'm just not selected as an astronaut, or, some kind of physical restraint, if something happens, I'm not able to, or, in any way, there's so many small things that can happen that can actually prevent you from becoming an astronaut. And so I think that in that way, it's just knowing that, and just having that. Obviously, the big dream would be to actually get to go to space and go to Mars. But honestly, what I extremely want to do is just be able to contribute to the mission in any way possible. Just because I've seen so many of the benefits that will come out from a mission to Mars. And so I'm very excited to be able to contribute that and be part of that team to actually achieve something. So whether that is on the mission or just staying here on Earth and helping, but the cool thing about becoming an astronaut is you kind of already, or kind of always, have a backup plan, because you have to have a career to apply to become an astronaut. So even if you're not selected, you still have your whole career that you've already established.
So tell me, now that you've spoken about it, the benefits of this mission, Can you let us into what the benefits of this mission are programmed to be? What are they thinking of when they're embarking on this maiden voyage?
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits that we're going to get from these missions to Mars. First of all, kind of the benefits that we're already getting from the mission to Mars is now that we have this idea of going there, we're continuously developing new technology and developing new things to try to solve the problems that we have of getting there. And as we develop these technologies, they're then just, marketed as everyday things. There's so many things that we use every single day that were either made for the space program or by the space program. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the technologies in the cell phone or anything kind of around your house were all kind of invented by trying to solve these incredible
Yeah,
problems.
actually, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So we're already kind of seeing some of that now as we're continuing to figure new things out. A big thing that will probably come from this is we're learning how to grow food on Mars and on the way to Mars. And, we're obviously going to be doing that with very limited resources. So once that is fully developed, we could possibly have where we're growing those foods or whatever here on Earth in certain ways to help with hunger anywhere. If we're able to grow food in space when we have absolutely nothing, there should be able to use that same system that we develop in other areas. And then actually from Mars, we should be able to gather resources that could be helpful here. Also, learning more about Mars could possibly potentially mean that in the long run, it could become a second place to live. So for example, if population continued to rise, we could possibly have Mars as a second hub. And at that point with technology, the distance in between would kind of be shortened to a reasonable time. But that's kind of like the long run of some of the benefits.
So when you're talking of sort of tapping into resources available on Mars, are you all thinking of water? Because from what I've read about the planet Mars, there's a lot of polar ice caps, a lot of ice on Mars, but water bodies as such haven't been identified. But is water one of the primary resources you're looking at, or other metals too? Because it is a terrestrial planet, there's a lot of metal in the planet. So what other resources exactly that you're
Yeah,
aiming at?
Yeah, so water is going to be super important for the first missions to Mars. So the idea is that, on Mars we have found ice, liquid water, and steam. So we found all different forms of water there. So there's definitely a lot of potential in that. So obviously the importance about water is that we could actually use it for oxygen, for growing food, for drinking, for fuel. It's kind of like so resourceful. So it would definitely be helpful while we're on Mars, but potentially resources that we could bring back to Earth would probably be any sort of minerals or
Yeah.
metals or anything that we find in the soil or somewhere else on Mars. So that's kind of the idea, is looking to see what kind of potential we have with Mars, because obviously we've done research with the rovers and everything there, but nothing kind of beats the quickness of a person being there. With the rovers, they have to wait for signals, which take 30 minutes to travel just because of the distance. And with a person, at least you're intellectually there, and you're able to think and like, oh, that rock looks interesting, or oh, we should do that. So much research gets done so much faster.
So can you let the cat out of the bag? I mean, you must be knowing more than us about planet Mars. Do they really say that there could be a possibility of life on Mars or underground?
Yeah, so definitely that is something that they're super excited to look into. We don't obviously know quite yet if there is any signs of life, but definitely a lot of scientists think that there is a huge amount of potential, especially
To
talking
have
about
life.
to have life. Yes, yes, yes.
Wow. Oh,
So especially at like the equator. So the equator is kind of like the warmest part of Mars. So that's where they found some forms of steam. And so if there is some steam, that would be a pretty ideal environment for bacteria to be growing in or
yes.
living in. So there is definitely a lot of potential, and it's probably going to be one of the main research that we'll do on Mars.
So we already have so much of content being written out there and sort of filmed and shot out there about how people would soon start taking space holidays and all of that. That's a very, very long way, isn't it? Very, very far away right now, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's kind of a mix. I would
Yeah.
definitely say that it is still a little ways away, but I really don't think it's that far away. So a lot of private companies, for example, like Virgin Galactic, they've been very persistent in continuing to do their test, and, they've gone up several times, and they've been very successful in everything that they've done. So it's going to be exciting to see how soon they start actually bringing in, an everyday person to kind of go on one of these missions. They've, brought up a couple of their employees at this point during one of their tests. So they have technically brought people to space right now. And so it is going to be crazy how they kind of start integrating people. But I don't think that they're too far away from actually getting to that point because of how close they are in all of their tests.
Wow. Okay. So essentially, we are we will get another planet, and we hopefully not mess it up like we messed this one up. Yeah. Okay. How has the COVID lockdown been for you on a personal level? I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of things have been canceled at this point. My plans for the summer have definitely all of a sudden just changed. So I was planning on actually possibly staying at school to work on flying. So, for example, I have my private pilot's license, but I want to get my instrument rating. And so I was going to be doing basically flying every day. But obviously, the school isn't necessarily doing that with everything going on. So it's just kind of been trying to shift and figure out what all I'm going to do this summer. I mean, I picked up a couple like summer online classes just to knock some stuff out while I'm sitting around doing
Like we all did. Like we all did.
But I mean, besides that, yeah, really just still figuring out what all I'm gonna try to fit in.
Yeah, so another few months and I think you'll be back training hard, won't you? I was looking this way because I'm opening up this question box on Facebook for a few questions that students from IIT have asked me to ask you. So one of them says, how did your parents react when they came to know about your exposition?
Yeah, so when I first asked my dad, when I was really young, that I wanted to be an astronaut and go to Mars, he was just like, oh yeah, you can do anything you want to do, and he was.
And what does he say now?
Yeah, so he obviously wasn't taking it too seriously, and he didn't know that I would still be working on it. I think, one of the first times I went to space camp is when my dad actually realized that this was something that I was really going to continue pursuing. So he kind of had like an aha moment and just kind of was like, oh my gosh, like she wants to actually go to space, and definitely just took like that moment to digest that. But now at this point, my dad has definitely, I guess, taken the space Kool-Aid and is drinking it and is, obviously loving space now and knows way more about space than he ever thought he would. So I've definitely dragged him along. But yeah, now he's super supportive. And, along the way, I've kind of, with everything that we've done, I think he's now realized, some of the risks, but also at the same time, all the safety procedures that go into everything. So seeing so much of that, it just kind of lets you ease a little bit, because space does have a really good track record, and all of the rockets and stuff that are built take years of test and building and that kind of thing. So I think with that kind of reassured him just a little bit.
Just a little bit, but yeah, I mean, as a parent, he wouldn't be showing it to you, Eliza, but he would be a little nervous, and I think he'll get more and more anxious as the date comes closer. But for now, I think from what I'm hearing from you, he's a super dad. There's another question here. What motivated you to write the book Astronaut, and how are you managing to do all of these different things so well all together?
Yeah, so the idea behind the book, so the book is called So You Want to Be an Astronaut, and it's available on Amazon, but kind of the idea behind the book is, so many people are interested in becoming astronauts and wanting to pursue that career, and, I definitely reach out and try to help as many people kind of understand what all it takes to become an astronaut. But the way I've always seen it is it's very much like a personal journey that you kind of have to take. I can't tell you which university to go to, what major to study. There's no to-do list to become an astronaut. There's endless possibilities of ways to become an astronaut. You can do military, you can just go in as a civilian, you can study medicine, you can be a pilot, you can study science, literally any range of science. And so there's so many different possibilities of what you can actually do. And so the book was there to kind of be a guidance for that, to kind of reach out to more people and help guide more people to, first of all, decide what kind of career you want to go into, also tackle the hard things. How would you talk to your parents about wanting to get interested in this? Because some parents might not be as receptive to that, or, what books to look into, what, videos to watch to learn more about space. And so it's just entirely like a complete guide of things that I've learned so far, and obviously connects back to becoming an astronaut because I share kind of my experiences with that, but definitely it relates to other dreams as well. If you're interested in doing something else, you can still follow the same kind of guide, just maybe not connecting it back to becoming an astronaut.
So my kid, one day, I have a 9-year-old daughter, Alyssa, and I remember a few months back, I think she watched a movie or something, a Hollywood movie, and she says to me, I also want to be an astronaut. And I'm like, baby, did you not see the ending of the movie? So I'm telling you, your dad's a brave man and he's so wonderfully supportive. Everything will go well, of course, we're sure of that. We have another question on Facebook, on the Facebook handle of IIT, from Ashutosh Yadav. He's saying, well, a space mission surely has a lot of imminent danger associated with it. Also, are there quite a few restrictions imposed on your lifestyle? And if you want to share with us what your lifestyle, how it is different from all the other regular, kids out there, because you're training for this particular project.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would say there's a little bit of a difference. I mean, a lot of time management goes into my life, based on, free time and then school and then all the different trainings that I want to do, and just kind of a balancing act. Definitely just like involved a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, my dad's also super helpful in that and helping like scheduling and things like that. I try to stay focused, more focused on just like the school side of things. And, my dad, as far as like space stuff, I'll tell him like if I'm interested in doing a certain, like training, and we'll try to work it out. But, for the most part, like a lot of stuff, my dad's like, okay, we're doing this that time. And I'm like, okay, great. So my dad definitely helps a huge amount with like scheduling and just like keeping me organized. But yeah, no, as far as like different lifestyle, I would probably say, I've definitely traveled a lot more than I would say the average college student has. I've been to 27 countries so far, and it's been, absolutely amazing to be able to travel. It's been super awesome. But also, I guess, like skipping out on school a little bit, in high school, I skipped out a fair good bit, I would say. Obviously, I was in as much as possible and kept up with everything, but
That's okay.
they were a lot easier to kind of deal with than like a university. So like on a university and professors, they're not as lenient just to like let you skip out on their class. So it's definitely been a challenge switching to college and having that kind of mindset now. So it has kind of worked out. I did a training while in my first semester, so I have worked it out a couple of times, but for the most part it has been more challenging, so I do try to stay in school more. But yeah, no, it's definitely just wanting to get as much done as possible, but yeah, just also having time to just be a normal person at the same time.
Okay, now you spoke about being a normal person, and I have a question here that's come from Ishita. She says, "Do you have a boyfriend? I mean, is life? Do you have a boyfriend, and do you do the normal things that all of us here do?"
Yeah, I mean, I would say my life is completely normal, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I mean, obviously, I do a lot of these other things, but for example, like, to my friends and everyone that, I'm around, like, all the time, obviously, they all know what I do. And, it's definitely strange switching to college because it was an entirely new group of people who had no idea what I was doing. And I never told anybody. They all just found out. It was, like, really weird. And so we had, that one conversation of them being like, oh, like, what is this? And then, we just kind of moved on from that point because they had already known me for a while. It's just like, a normal person. And then they just learned that this is something else that I do. So yeah, so I would say like, everything that has happened is just like, having normal friends, having normal relationships. Nothing's like different in any way, because usually like I meet all these people and then they find out about what I'm doing afterward, and they're usually just supportive of it, and we don't necessarily talk about it all the time. It's not like
So you don't get like a
all I talk
reaction. You don't get like a reaction like that reaction. You don't get that reaction.
Well, usually, like when, for example, like when my friends like first found out about it, they were just like, "What? Like, hold up, what?" But usually afterward, like after like a few minutes, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! Like, I know you," and I'm like it's really not a big deal, and then they just kind of move on from that. And so yeah, but no, definitely my closer friends. I mean, we like never talk about it, to be honest, and that's kind of how it's always been. You know, even in high school and when I was younger, all of my friends know about everything that I've done, but we never like talked about it. There's the occasional joke, you know, that kind of falls in there, like, "Oh, space girl," or whatever it might be. But there was never,
Space
we never
girl.
like, it was never
They
always
call you
talked
that.
about.
So there's loads of messages there with hearts and love and luck and all of that coming out to you from a lot of people watching you from India. So you're well known. You're famous. People are writing about you. People are talking about you. Uh, how does all of that feel?
I guess, I mean, I don't know. It's just, like most of the time I don't really like realize it or even like think about it, to be honest. Like it's just, I don't know, super. I mean, I'm definitely like super glad that I have, you know, a platform to be able to share about space and teach people about space, and especially teach people about the mission to Mars, because in my opinion, we won't be able to get to Mars without a public, you know, pushing that, and public, and having that public interest behind us to actually push us to getting to Mars. So it's definitely been super crazy to kind of see this change, because when I was first getting into this, no one was talking about Mars. No one was interested in going to Mars. And, you know, at that point, we were happy with the shuttle and we were going with the shuttle. And then the space shuttle program ended and we started turning towards Mars. But at that point, the public wasn't really realizing what was going on. You know, a lot of people thought the space program was closed, there weren't astronauts anymore, and there was this brief period where everyone just thought space no longer was a thing. And, you know, I even had family members like, "Oh, what is Alyssa gonna do now that there weren't astronauts anymore?" So really my platform started to just teach people, like, yes, there's a plan for a mission to Mars. Yes, a new rocket is being built. Like, this stuff takes time. That's why we're starting this process now, to be ready, you know, for the future. So it definitely started as just an education platform and being able to, you know, teach people about space, and then along the way just being able to share what I've done. Because as I got older, obviously I realized that, you know, not other kids were doing the same thing I was, but I, you know, realized that anyone could have done what I did. And so being able to share that, and then also in the space program, it takes tens of thousands of people to send one astronaut into space. So we have to inspire those tens of thousands of people now to continue and fill those jobs within the space program.
So much maturity at such a young age. Just listening to you talk, and I mean, I'm delighted completely. And you're so lovely, also. Tell us, like, throw a few things at us. Tell us a few things about Mars that we don't know, apart from the routine stuff that we read about.
Yeah, well, I mean, something, so Mars is about, like, I think it's like 95% carbon dioxide, something like that. So a lot of the atmosphere is just full of carbon dioxide, which is not ideal for people, but it can be useful, in some ways. So kind of the plan, it's kind of interesting though. So the plan of possibly turning Mars into another Earth, would actually be basically what we're doing to Earth. Global warming is kind of what we want to happen to Mars. So since Mars is colder, since it's further from the sun, we actually want to heat up the planet, melt all that ice, get all that water running, to liquid water, and then that way that will also bring a lot of the water up from underneath the surface, and so that will kind of lead to, you know, having oceans and that kind of thing. But the biggest challenge will actually be just changing the atmospheric composition. So like taking all this carbon dioxide and wanting more nitrogen, more oxygen. So that's going to be the most difficult part. So the first step is going to have to be thickening the atmosphere, because right now Mars, if you were to just,
Very
you know,
thin atmosphere.
right, if you were to go and like plant a bunch of trees right now that just started eating up all that carbon dioxide and produce
Yeah.
oxygen, that oxygen is just going to leave. Like, it's not going to hold in, it's not going to stay, because the atmosphere isn't thick enough to actually hold that gas in. So the first steps would be trying to figure out how to thicken it to be able to keep that oxygen in. But at that point, you know, obviously we have loads of plants that are able to just eat up that carbon dioxide. So that would be the plan, to start converting those gases into new gases.
Wow, this is so fascinating. I mean, you're actually planning to create a whole new habitable planet out there, how many miles away from us? Wow. So how will it be? I mean, let's just assume that this is done and you're going. How many miles are you going to be flying out into space? How long is it going to take? What kind of a craft is it going to be? How long will you take to get there? And once you get there, then what unfolds the first few days? Just take us through a little bit of a dream journey.
Yeah, so right now, so the rocket that is being built is called the SLS rocket, Space Launch System, and then there's a new capsule called, or the Orion capsule, which are going to be the two main components that are kind of going to come together. So the Orion capsule is really the only part that the astronauts will be in. So the plan is that we'll take off from Earth, and then we'll head on our journey to Mars. So right now, with current technology, it's going to take about 6 months to get from Earth to Mars. However, we do know that there is already technology that's going to reduce that time to 6 weeks. So there's a development of a new plasma engine that will actually take the 6 months and reduce it to 6 weeks. However, the first missions to Mars won't be able to use that, just because it still has to go through testing and safety and all this other kind of criteria. So the first missions will use just the old normal engine. So it'll take 6 months to get there. We'll stay there for quite some time. So after we get there, you know, a lot of what we're going to be doing is just going to be like everyday task chores almost, you know, cleaning air filters, or, you know, tending to, let's say we have somewhat of like a garden for like our food supply, tending to that. A lot of it is just going to be like basic chores for survival. And that's just kind of going to be keeping up maintenance of the habitat that we're in. But then, of course, we'll have our research as well. So experiments and any sort of things that we want to look into. So that's going to be the other, you know, big part of what we do while we're there. And then we'll probably stay on Mars for a good bit of time, because we actually have to wait for the planets to like realign. So since the planets don't orbit in perfect circles, sometimes Mars is closer, sometimes it's further away. So once we get there, we have to wait for it to kind of be close again to be able to come back. So they're thinking around 9 months to come back, but a lot of the numbers can change depending on the distance. But right now, those are kind of the estimates.
Wow. Loads and loads of luck for that. And any parting shot that you'd like to share with our Indian boys and girls watching? And before you sort of give me that parting shot, will you be able to come back with that answer to that age-old question: are men from Mars, are women from Venus?
Yes, hopefully we'll figure that out.
So how would you like to say bye to everyone watching you here in India?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, a big thing to share to you guys is just really to, you know, come up with whatever your dream may be and follow it. And if you are interested in the space program, I think now is a wonderful time to start getting interested in the space program. I think we are going to see a huge explosion in space coming up, not only because of how many, you know, governmental agencies are in space, but now with the rise of the private sector, you know, these private companies aren't going to have the restrictions that the governmental agencies have. You know, you see so many people interested in NASA, which there are so many other space agencies with astronauts going to space and stuff. But for example, like NASA, with having the restrictions of, you know, being a U.S. citizen and that kind of thing, those restrictions aren't going to be in place with private companies. You know, a private company, they want the best people they can get. And they're not going to care as much, you know, as including their employee force, you know. So we're going to be able to do, you know, more people in space, more people from different countries from space. So it's going to be really amazing to see, you know, possibly countries like, you know, several countries, for example, like in South America, that don't have a space program. They're going to be able to contribute to the space program in some way, possibly even become astronauts at this point. So definitely get involved in space now, because there's going to be a huge kind of switch in kind of international collaboration as far as like the governmental agencies kind of play into, but also with the private industry, we're going to see lots of cool things happening in space.
And let's also hope that we often read as to how the next wars will be fought in space, and let's hope that doesn't happen with the space zone in the years ahead. And it's just so fantastic, Eliza, really, because earlier when I was working, we didn't have laptops and we didn't have smartphones, and then all of this came in, and still 13 years to go, and I may just be around to even see a man stepping foot on Mars. And I think this is such a fantastic age we're living in. I mean, the progress and the change is at such a rapid rate. I think it's one of the most fascinating times for humanity. And I'm wishing you all the luck, and I'm giving you a virtual hug because you are adorable, completely 100%. And I hope I will see you soon sometime. And you have a good evening, and lots of love to you, and loads of love coming there to you in all the comments. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, and Space Girl, we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Keep the love for space going.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.
And thank you all of you for watching. Thank you all. I hope you all had a good time. I had a great time. There she is saying bye, isn't she? Just so lovable. Okay. So we're going to end this. And here we go.